stand back up, to get back on the right path, and to rebuild the Nation of Islam to what it is today. Well, I'm here to introduce to you that angel. He's carrying the name of an angel, Gabriel, in the scriptures, but we know it's Jabril. And this is one of the most foremost scholars of Islam walking this planet today. This is the brother who sat at the table of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, spoke one-on-one with him, and can recite and refer to his dialogue almost word for word 20, 30, 40 years ago. This is a man that I want you to very, very intently listen to. Because again, Allah has sent us an angel and this brother right here this afternoon. So I want you to give him a welcome that's most suiting for him. Because if you talk about a powerful man, if you talk about a man that's dynamic and is causing the forces of nature to turn, why? Because the words that he's giving us causing nature in us, the nature of us, to develop and grow and change. That's this man you're about to listen to. So let us give him a warm round of applause, my brother and your brother, Brother Minister Jabril Muhammad. Asalaam alaikum.
Please sit. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but He, and Muhammad is His servant and messenger. I don't know what to say behind those words.
Go ahead, brother.
Two things come to my mind as I listen to those words. Number one, all praise is due to Allah. I am not being humble when I say that I have never had an original thought ever in my life, and nor have you. I'll say that again. I have never had an original thought in my life, and I have never thought one thing that somebody else has not already thought before me and expressed. And the same goes for you. I hope before we leave, if I don't come back to that, that somebody will remind me of what practical bearing that has on our future. If I forget to say it, remind me. And the other thing is in two parts. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad one day sent me out to do an interview or do a radio program. And he gave me my instructions and told me what he wanted me mainly to cover. And then he said, now, brother, if you stick to what you know, you'll always sound intelligent. Did you get that? A lot of us talk about that which we have no knowledge of every day. He didn't say I would necessarily be intelligent, but I certainly would sound it if I stuck to what he told me. And in the other half of that comes to my mind, all of this while I was listening, it was the first couple of days in May 1971 in Phoenix, Arizona, and I waited until everyone else left the table. There wasn't that many at dinner that day. And there's something I wanted to say to him. And so when no one else was in the room, except God, I said to him, dear Holy Apostle, I said, I just want you to know how grateful I am for Allah's having blessed me to be among those who have been privileged with the opportunity to get a chance to know you in person, to know you up close, to observe you. I said, I know I don't know you as well as many others, especially those in Chicago, but I do know you better than many millions throughout this earth. And I know that I was not put in this position to act big, to pretend that I know what I don't know, or to pretend that I am what I'm not. But I was put in this position to learn everything I can about you and from you for the purpose of passing it on to others.
That's right.
I hope that some of that is conveyed, that I have been blessed to learn to you this afternoon. Not only what I've learned from and about this illustrious black man, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but what I have learned in the light of his wisdom about this magnificent black man, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, who is in our midst today. He is more than the premier leader of black people. Really, he is the only leader down here where we stand on this earth.
That's right.
I have to clarify it because I'm of those who are convinced that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is not dead. And you do hear the Honorable Louis Farrakhan often refer to his teacher as the leader. And so there's leaders on different levels. You brothers in your home, I trust, are leaders in your home. So that thing about leadership and teachership goes all throughout humanity. Now, I didn't have in my mind a subject. I thought that I was going to get here earlier yesterday, but there was a mix-up, and I didn't. And I thought I would have gotten here early enough to have clarified some thoughts in my mind. I don't care what we know, you can't cover it all in an hour or two. Impossible. If you try to, you bore everybody, and they'll either throw you out or they'll leave. And it wasn't until last night when my brother, Jackie Muhammad, gave me 2 books. The third he couldn't find. I don't know what's in that one, but these 2 books, one's called The Son of Joseph. The subtitle is The Parentage of Jesus. And the other one is called Who Was Jesus? The Historical Jesus and the Synoptic Gospels. I don't know what's in either book, but I read a couple of words that triggered something in my mind. And if it pleases Allah, I may do something a little unorthodox, and that is take something from a book that is unpublished that I've written, even though in part I'm on this tour to plug a book that's already out. Kind of ridiculous, isn't it? But we're not on book tours just to make money. We do want to make some money now. I do want you to give up your $14 to buy this book. I want you to give it up. But we are more concerned with saving each other in the light of what God has revealed to and through 2 men.
Come on. Go ahead.
2 men. 2 men. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. I'm not going to try to prove everything that I'm going to say. I'm not going to try to. We'll be here too long. Some things I'm just going to say it. Even if you reject it, I want you to walk out with it so clear in your mind that you don't forget it. Argue with yourself about it later. Some things maybe we can prove a little bit. So I don't have a title for this at all. Maybe we'll call it this and that. But there are a couple of points I want to begin with. I think this is a beautiful piece that was written by some Caucasian people. They can tell the truth when they want to.
That's right.
That appeared in the Winston-Salem Journal. If you don't have it, I'll leave a copy. I think you may already have it. But every one of you needs to have this for yourself. Not just to read it and put it down, but it's so loaded with information from and about the Honorable Louis Farrakhan that I think you really need to chew it up. There's 1 or 2 things I want to read from it. And one piece is called Music Review. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I just want to take 2 or 3 paragraphs. I know it's out of context, but the writer says at one point, in many ways, it was an astonishing performance. Let me stop before I get to it. You're a boxer, and you stop boxing for 2 or 3 years. You don't just jump back in that ring. You will get crushed. You got to go through training. Then you have to have some tune-up fights, especially if you're going for the championship fight. Right?
That's
You don't just jump in there, even with a so-called journeyman. He will knock you out. Your heels will be in the sky. You'll be on your backside, bumping your head on the canvas, and you'll be an embarrassment to yourself and all your friends. I mean, for the Honorable Louis Farrakhan to put his violin down for 40 years and to pick it up with just 2 years training. Now think, not just 2 years training the way many of us would do it, where you don't have no more than just a job to go to, but this man has been on an exercise program, ferocious. He has to guide mosque, a whole nation under him, involving thousands of people. He says things that influences the lives of millions in and outside of this country.
That's right.
He has all kind of problems coming at him morning, noon, and night. The unexpected is to be expected by him. He has one hell of a schedule. He doesn't prepare for one lecture at a time. He's always has to prepare for several simultaneously.
Right.
And this is a little small hint about an unusual man, because his schedule is unreal.
That's right.
Come on.
And he's continuously traveling, talking to big groups and little groups and in-between groups, and dealing on an international level while finding time at 3:30 in the morning to practice the violin. Please, what kind of schedule is that? That points to the kind of unique man he is. And it should tell the hypocrites. Let me sidetrack, get off the, no, I'm not getting off the track, I'm on the track, but do a little side point. There's some brothers and sisters who are yapping at him. I'm sorry to use the word yap. Since I haven't mentioned anybody's name, nobody can really take it personal. But there are some brothers and a few sisters who are running off at their ignorant mouth about him.
Go ahead, Brother Jabril.
And they're seemingly increasing in number. And so I'm going to talk about them in my next article a little bit. I haven't used the column for that, but I want to help to touch them up, help them to understand if they'll read it, or even if they get angry. I want to remind those brothers, especially those who were former laborers under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I want to remind them of what he told them.
That's right.
Maybe it may affect their conscience, and maybe it won't. But I can't see anybody hitting my brother without me doing something about that. If you hit him, you've hit me. All praise is due to Allah. So, there's much to be said about that, but the writer says, in many ways it was an astonishing performance, and not only for the degree of technical refinement, which was surprising. Farrakhan played with mostly short tone, I can't see the whole word there, mostly in tune and with rhythmic incisiveness. More remarkable, however, was his personal fire. At times it turned into athleticism, even roughness, the way his speeches are. Are they not? Sure. But Farrakhan understands what being a soloist means, and this raised thoughts about where this, again, where such poise comes from, and just how far it can carry an amateur into specialized a situation. Those words are big. Just think about them. I don't want to spend time dealing with them, but just turn them over. Maybe one of the other brothers will get into the implications of that. It's like Ali. We never did see him in his absolute prime. Right. Never. Never. Right in the prime, he was out of it, as far as boxing was concerned. Right. And when he came back, he demonstrated a remarkable ability as an athlete. Remarkable. Well, here's a man who hasn't picked up the violin in 40 years. In Farrakhan's case, it carried him far. Now, this was his tune-up, by the way. He will play before the world, if it pleases Allah, on the 17th of next month in Chicago. He had you say, can I get the videotape? Yes, after. Even the one he just did, he said after the 17th. He had everyone's attention, and not just because of the novelty. I mean, it was the novelty. Imagine all of what people have heard about this mean, vicious Louis Farrakhan, and he comes out with the violin.
That's right. Come on.
Woo! Seemingly such a gentle instrument. One got the sense from this playing that he could do anything he set his mind to.
Go ahead.
Our brother is made by God and is Christ, among other things, to tell you, sisters and brothers, all of us, what is inside of ourselves. I once asked the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, how does one know what one is born to do? And I'm going to give you the answer he gave right then. There's more he said on another occasion, but the short but loaded answer was, without any hesitation, brother, Allah has given us all many talents, but each a talent that we can perform perfectly. And on another occasion, it went on to indicate that your talents lay through your likes. And wouldn't it be mean of God to give us talent that we don't know how to discover? So one of the great indications that we have a friend in God, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, through and in the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, is that this man's presence and works enlightens our minds. Your friend enlightens your mind. Your enemy seeks to cloud up your mind. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan does not do anything but enlighten wherever he goes.
Right.
And then the last paragraph. And if he has set his mind to the violin to inspire black youth to pursue this dying art, he will surely get results. Now the other is just a section from the interview they did with him. And this is a lesson for all of us, every one of us. He said, Farrakhan was a full-blown entertainer when he became a Muslim, inducted into the faith by Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad, the founder of the Nation of Islam, in October 1955. Well, actually, he really heard the Honorable Elijah Muhammad February 26th. That's so significant. 1955, and he accepted right then. But it took time, the letters got lost, it took time for him to go through the processing, and of course, he wasn't actually registered until the 10th month. That December, he was in New York playing in a club in Greenwich Village when Muhammad made an announcement that members of the Muslim faith had to choose between music and Islam. Quote, it took me about 5 minutes to make up my mind. Now, this is not something he just said here. This is something he said in private discussion with us over the years. I mean, there are others of us who know him for a period of years. He just didn't say this for this interview to look good. It took me about 5 minutes to make up my mind. I could have lived without music, but I could not live without truth. He had 30 days after Muhammad's edict to play and sing. Quote, I decided to do as much music in that 30 days as I possibly could, he said. The writer goes on, for his last professional engagement at a country club. Now listen now, these are the words of a black man who was at a young age intensely in love with his people. His mother guided that kind of, nurtured that kind of thing in him. And he didn't know how to lift our people, but she put him on the violin at 5. And he grew up with the thought that he was searching for the one who would get us out of our predicament, but on the other hand, he was going to use his music to at least make our people feel happy. If he couldn't free us, and he didn't know how to free himself either, he would at least do that which would make us happy. Isn't that interesting? He said this, I played jazz, violin, classical violin, sang ballads, calypso, sang the blues, danced, and told jokes. Pearl Bailey's manager, who happened to be in the audience that night, came backstage after the show and offered Farrakhan a contract for $550 a week, which in those days was a lot of money. It's nothing nowadays. You can hardly blow your nose with that kind of money nowadays. The men arranged to meet in a restaurant 2 days later to seal the deal. I had a vision this particular night. Now I want you to stop and think. Even though he heard what he heard, think on this. Think on what he is saying. He was considering signing this deal. Somebody intervened. I had a vision this particular night of two doors. One was open. I could see through it, and over the door was written success. And I could see a mound of gold and diamonds. You know what gold and diamond? A mound. Not just gold and diamonds, 2 pieces of gold and 2 pieces of 2 diamonds, but a mound of them. That's something that we'd like to have. And if you say you don't want to be rich, you're a liar. Outright liar. If you say that I want to be poor all my life and this is the way I can demonstrate my loyalty to God, you're insane. But over the other door was written Islam, and it had a black veil over the door. I decided that I would go through that door rather than take the known door that could have brought me greater success and wealth, so it indicated. So I never went to the dinner or signed the contract, but went straight ahead to Islam. Oh, that's a lot in that. Somebody intervened in his life. Who did that? Well, from my perspective and the perspective of those of us who think as he thinks, God did that. When God chooses a human being for the benefit of others, he chooses you before you're born. You don't have any say-so over the major things in your life. You might have a choice this day whether you're going to buy gray shoes or blue shoes. But for the major things in your life, you have no say. You think you have say until one day you grow to the point where God makes you to understand you wasn't the boss over nothing in your life. I don't know how far we're going to go with this, but I want to go into this thing about Jesus for a minute. We'll just walk along for a minute and see what happens. This book, Who Was Jesus? A lot of books out on about Jesus, isn't there? Seemingly no end. I have no idea what the Congressional Library says, but I know there are thousands. 60 or 70,000 I read in one book. But what about the other languages? Thousands, maybe 1 million, I don't have any idea. All this stuff written about Jesus, and somebody else comes up with a book saying, no, all these other people are wrong. Take my book. The next man comes up saying, no, he don't have it together. This man, I don't know what his book says, but in the jacket it says, as my study continued, it became increasingly clear that who Jesus was did not depend entirely on historical events, but on the impression he made on those around him. Well, that makes sense. Nobody lives their life in a vacuum. Isn't it a fact, to take a simple example, when you are extremely happy, don't you tell somebody?
Right.
When you're extremely sad, don't you tell somebody? That is not unique to Jesus, but applies to all human beings. The situation with Socrates, for example, that other great figure at the origins of Western culture, is similar. The task of the historian in both cases is not merely to find historical facts about these two figures, but to develop a complete picture of who they were, taking into account all aspects of their lives. All aspects of their lives? All? Do you really mean that? I don't know what he says in here about women, but did Jesus know women? He had a mother. He interacted with a woman at birth, didn't he? How come you hardly find anything written, really written, very few books about Jesus' thinking about females? Come on with that. What did Jesus think about women? Did he like them? Did he hate them? Was he scared of them? How was his relationship with females developed? Good question. Why? Because there's something in this book about that. Brother, are you saying that to develop in me a desire to buy your book? Exactly right. I didn't want to go too far in this one.
Come on.
I kind of eased it out there. And I moved the white man into place and said what he said. And this white man raises the question in a book that he wrote. I didn't write it. He wrote it. Was Jesus married? Uh-oh. Oh, God. And then I looked at this other book, and I looked in the index to see if there was anything about females. And there was. One part of this goes, I know it's out of context, but I'm going to read it anyway. This white man, I don't know what his whole book says, but this particular title of chapter is called The Man, Christ Jesus. And in this chapter somewhere, he says, he's criticizing the church for having gone astray from where Jesus was coming from. Now, there's a lot of white folks who have written books criticizing other white folks for saying that they have perverted the reality of Jesus and twisted up his teaching. They are into this argument all the time. And at one point he says, the Roman Catholic Church diverged from Orthodox and Protestant in asserting the dogmas, both the Immaculate Conception and the Assumption of the Virgin Mary. Immaculate Conception means Jesus was birthed by Mary, and it was so clean that no man was involved. As if to say, if a man was involved, that makes it dirty. Come on. Isn't that what that comes down to? You say, brother, that's wrong. But I want to know, then, if I'm ignorant, I want to understand why you call it immaculate. And the Assumption of the Virgin Mary. She went up to heaven. She went up. Her son went up. Later on, she went up. They say after we die, if we've been good niggas, we'll go up. Right? Isn't that what they told us during slavery? From the first days and for nearly 2,000 years, the church condoned slavery. Now that's true. It has been anti-Semitic and viciously persecuting Jews as God killers. Well, that's true too. And Christians are only now recognizing the theological error and moral shame of the accusations of deicide. Deicide means the killing of God. That's heavy. There's a white man named Paul Harvey. I heard him on the radio. I got to get the full text of what he said, but I was surprised. He was talking about some scholar. I didn't get the whole thing, even though I don't have it all, but I'm going to raise it anyway. He said that from somebody's study, it seemed like the way they treated Jesus, he really died of police brutality. I said, that got my attention, police brutality. It's pretty interesting. Kind of reminds us of a whole bunch of folks we know. Huh? Now, deicide, how can you kill God? Can you really kill him? The Bible says you can rob him. God asked the question, will a man rob God? He said, yeah, God said, you robbed me. If God can be robbed, can he also be killed? That's heavy, isn't it? I mean, the question, white folks raised this. And they for years have accused the Jews of being God killers. Now, this is Washington, D.C.? Is this Washington? Yes. Do they have a museum here that the Jews spent their money to ram down everybody's mouth what everybody else did to them? And that some Germans, I understand on the news, wanted, that stuff was so heavy on them, they wanted another portion, another section or a room to lighten this stuff on themselves, this pressure. They wanted some room to show Ben-Gurion and some German leader meeting at some point after World War II. To lighten up, the Jews said nothing. This is our story. We're going to tell it the way we want to tell it. Our money, our building, our story. Later, if it's one-sided, we're going to tell it as we want to tell it, and that's how they are. Huh? They're like that. One thing you got to give Jews credit for, they believe in their own program. However, there's one black man who is being used by God, and I'm not saying this in a pejorative or negative or put down way of Jews, but in this battle, this arm wrestling contest that's been going on between Jews all over the planet and one black man, Louis Farrakhan.
Right.
This arm wrestling one, their arm is going down.
That's right.
Right now. And he's doing it very gently. And you'd be surprised how the news affected Jews that Louis Farrakhan played Mendelssohn, who was a Jew. It's being discovered now that his teacher for the last 2 years, is a Jewish lady. And you know something? Without going into that, that connects with this fact that Jews, for the most part, from my limited reading, are the ones who present a more realistic picture of Jews than have Christians over the last 2,000 years. And Jews, more than Christians, have raised a more realistic view of the relationship of Jesus to females. It's interesting. Jesus had a mother. They say his mother was the mother of God. Jesus was God. His mother is the mother of God, who was her husband. Well, she didn't have one. There has been almost institutionalized misogyny regarding women, meaning the hatred of women, regarding women as inferior to men or as a source of evil. Don't they call y'all the temptation? I mean, isn't that a hell of a thing to say? Women are the temptation, not men, women. Isn't that kind of bent out of shape? If it wasn't for the woman eating that damn apple. Did you know, my dear brother and sister, without going further into this, he said some interesting things, but without going further into that, did you know, let me go back to that. Let me go back. The last sentence is, therefore, it is possible that the church's central faith and ethic, its Christology, meaning the study of Christ, and its teachings on sex and the family have been distorted by erroneous views on the birth of Christ. Thank you, Brother Jackie, for letting me have these two books. Isn't that something to think about?
Yes, sir.
Are you saying that the erroneous or false knowledge of the way this man was born corrupts the views of those who believe in him on everything else in life? Right. One of the most corrupting influences that Jesus was born, he didn't have no father. And that's what made it immaculate, and that's what made it all right. Way down under that is a hatred for women. I can't go into that right now, too deep. But by God's grace, I'm going to summarize it from something that I wrote that I'm not going to give you. Not now. This is a book called Farrakhan, God's Man on the Straight Path, Volume 1, that I can't seem to get out. Allah's the best knower. Let me take a few things from this. I didn't mean to stand here and read for 2 hours, but I'm just going with the flow. Would you go with me with this flow? Now, there's something I think I may touch. I hope you don't throw me out of here. But there's something in here that bears witness. I know that it's kind of, you shouldn't take a book that you haven't even published and you put it out. It reduces the sales, they say, later for that. God's truth. This is chapter 42. I want to take a few words out of it, and then I'll sit down. God's truth, stranger than fiction. Isn't that what we have come to see? Those of you who already are followers of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, you know there are many things you see now that are so different than the way you used to see things.
That's right.
We can come from the simple idea that we once upon a time thought that when we die and breathe out for the last time and they bury us, that we're coming back. I'm sorry, I know when I first heard that, I felt bad. When I first learned that I wasn't coming back, I felt bad. I don't want to die. Hell no. For what? I'm sitting there in the chair. I'm one of the new people sitting there. This brother's telling me that when we're dead, we're not coming back. I said, damn, I mean, why not? No, you can't do that. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said there's 3 things you can't do. 1, to get born, you got to have a mother and a father. After that first man, everybody else got to come that way. God cannot lie. And when you're dead, that's it. For you. You live through your babies, you live through your works, but you're not coming back. And when you drink that in, then you start looking at other people differently. You start valuing life differently. Who at first, at least in English, said that God's truth is stranger than fiction? I said, I don't know. It's good to be able to say, I don't know. None of us in this room knows everything. In fact, there is more that we don't know than that which we do know. What our focus this afternoon is on the most important thing to know. And the most important thing to know is what opens up the door to gain all other knowledge of value. And to see it in perspective. However, in a book titled The Dictionary of Cliches, we read that the author, George Byron, of the book Don Juan, wrote, true quote, truth is always stranger than fiction, close quote. The editors think he might have first worded this concept with such words in English. In any case, they state that this expression means, quote, some things are quite remarkable and indeed hard to believe, close quote. I wrote something in the last issue of the Final Call about the bumblebee. I don't know if you read it or not. If you didn't, go back and read it. Because in the article, it's the basis of the defense I would like to give, the backup, my bearing of witness to what I thought was a remarkable work done by the Honorable Louis Farrakhan on the 21st and the 28th of last month. He cleared the name of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. You say, well, everybody doesn't know it, so what? I'm sure people are cleared and vindicated in court every day, and the world doesn't necessarily know it. The more important the case, eventually everybody else will come to know it. So the idea that truth is stranger than fiction evolved from this fiction among English-speaking people, whether Mr. Byron first expressed it or not. When is truth so strange that fiction seems more realistic? Let's look at the idea of fiction. By fiction, we mean that which is imaginary as opposed to what is real, or even that which is unreal and cannot be except in the imagination, a fable, an illusion, fantasy, an untruth, a misrepresentation, a misstatement, or an outright lie. Santa Claus, 369 pounds, jumping down everybody's chimney simultaneously, regardless of the differences in time zones. And he does not get sooty. Please. Easter eggs. Rabbits laying eggs. Rabbits don't lay eggs. And what in the hell does that have to do with Jesus coming back from the dead? And when you go to find out the truth of it, then you find out the whole thing is a lie. Right. When and under what conditions does fiction seem more real than truth? You know what I'm going into this for? Because now I've decided I'm going to say something. Some of you may want to throw me out of here. You may have the thought, but you may not want to buck the FOI or the MGT. But I'm going to say this, by the help of Allah, if I don't ever see you again. And maybe this is the thing I was supposed to say that I talked about 10 years ago. I don't know. Brother Jackie reminded me, 10 years ago is the last time I spoke here. I've been in and out of the city with the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, but not to speak. Anyway, and he said that the thing I said I was going to say, I didn't say it. So maybe this is it. We'll see. I'm saying this right now just to open the door of your mind and heart for the thing I want to say, okay? That's the only reason I'm saying this. When and under what conditions does fiction, as described in the previous sentence, seem more real than truth? This is easy to answer now in the light of the divine light cast by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and then, after a moment of darkness, cast again by the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. In Isaiah 28:21, we read that at a certain time, called the end of the world, and in a specific place, the United States of America, the Lord Almighty would do his work, his strange work, and bring to pass his act, his strange act. Strange to who and why? Why should anything God says or does be strange or be regarded as strange to anybody? Well, the bumblebee is the case in point. White folks say the bumblebee can't fly, even while the bumblebee is flying.
Right.
It's not supposed to fly. Why, white folks? Because of our understanding of the laws of aerodynamics. Our understanding say the bee is not supposed to fly. But the bee is unaware of that and continues to fly. The bee is unaware of the white man's, this white scientist's ignorance. I'm saying white folks because they're the ones who told us about this. And some of us go out and ignorantly repeat what some fool has said.
Yes, sir.
Now, as the white folks and white scientists gain more knowledge, then the bee's flight makes more sense. His wingspan is not broad enough. His body's too heavy. This is the way we see it. The bee flies. Anyhow, despite their ignorance, and the flight of the bee even reveals their ignorance. As they gain more knowledge, then the bee's flight or ability to fly makes more sense. White folks wrote a book called Chaos. I'm in the middle of reading it right now. And there was a period of time when in their development of science, not too many years ago, they said chaos is really the rule. What underlines everything is pure chaos. Then a few more studies, a few more years, and now they're back to seeing, no, they went through a period of time when their misunderstanding, new information came and it caused them to be confused. The chaos was a projection of their own mind. White folks right now are confused about the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. And they give explanations of him that are as ignorant and as wicked as the explanations they gave of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But what I did in this book, I just called a chapter about our brother. Again, this is the one. His picture is on the cover, and I got it placed. I was trying to aim it over the heart of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I hope that you pick it up and read it and see. It's not everything that could be said, but it does include some of the basis, some of the scientific basis, not everything, but some, that sits underneath the rise of both men. One man in the 30s, the other man in about 15 and a half years ago. Either God raised these men or God did not. Brother, is there any such thing as a half or partially pregnant woman? You speak with such confidence. How do you know? But if you ask this side of the room, it would be a resounding no. Right? Same thing. Either God picked these men or God did not. And if God is backing our brother, then America will have to bow to his wisdom. But he is making it easy for them. God, through this brother, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, is making it easy for the most proud, the most arrogant people on the face of the earth to consider and reconsider what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad laid out before this country for over 40 years. He's a beautiful man, isn't he? Beautiful sounding voice, easy to look at, easy to listen to. Isn't he, brothers? Come on now. It's a fact. In Isaiah 55, 7 through 11, are the following words combined from several translations of the Bible from God himself through prophet Isaiah. Quote, "Let the wicked or evil man forsake his evil thoughts and way. Return to the Lord. He will freely and abundantly pardon and show love, mercy, and compassion towards him." Close quote. He declared through this prophet that his thoughts and ways are not those of the wicked. Moreover, he clearly states in the Living Bible, quote, This plan of mine is not what you would work out, neither are my thoughts the same as yours. But here came a man, Elijah Muhammad, in such materials as How to Eat to Live, saying, I want you all to learn to think as Master Farad Muhammad. And he says, this one, my teacher, is God himself.
Come on.
Now, we as a nation, we blew that. We didn't do that. Here comes the Honorable Louis Farrakhan telling us the same thing. And did you know, sisters and brothers, that our brother, and you've heard him, I don't say every one of you, but you've heard him speak and sometimes can compare aspects of his being to that of a woman. Did you know that Paul stated in his writings that to form Christ in his listeners was similar to the travail a woman goes through in giving birth to a child? I hear a lot of people talk about your pain. In every article, this last one, this one now, the one that come up, and from now on till my hand get tired, I'm going to mention pain. Because we put too much emphasis on our own pain. Woe is me. You call you up on the phone, how do you feel, brother? How do you feel, sister? Bad. Call you the next day, how do you feel? Worse. Call you the next day, I'm out of here. I'm about to leave the planet. Woe is me. Some of us use and wallow in difficulties, and we use our wallowing as a means of getting attention. Please, if you don't feel good, we used to ask Elijah Muhammad, how you feel, dear Holy Apostle? He said, oh, brother, spiritually I feel fine. I don't feel too good physically. He would separate them. You can feel good in the spirit and not feel too good physically. Not us, not a lot of us. I feel bad. I never felt this worse, this bad. Meaning, I want attention on me. Please, let's get out of that foolishness. Wallowing in misery. Well, something they did years ago and I ain't overcome it. You better overcome it. Look, why not look back on what was done back then from the eyes of the insight you gain now, rather than from the point of view of a juvenile or a 2-year-old or an 8-year-old? Why look at the situation the same way you looked at it back then? Haven't you grown? Do we have supreme wisdom? What kind of wisdom? Supreme. What is that? There's nothing better than that, right?
That's right.
Do we have it?
Yes, sir.
Supreme wisdom exonerates the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Do you think he felt pain over being talked about? Lied on? Huh?
Come on.
Stop this stuff about my pain is the most important of all pain.
Think about it. Think about it.
If I'm stepping on your foot,
Go ahead.
causing a bit of discomfort, it's nothing personal. On one level, and then it is personal on another. We got to get out of that. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan put on some Jewish scholars' mind to make them re-examine the Holocaust. Like, in other words, since God allowed it to happen, what was God's aim in letting that happen to y'all? And then brother came over and is working on us, getting us to think. We've been through 400 some odd years of pure D hell. Huh? I mean hell. Hell is I don't have. Hell is I can't get. Hell is they did it to me. Hell is they doing it to me. Hell is they going to do it to me. Right? Huh? How about the why of God's involvement? Muslims got to get out of this. We're supposed to be getting a stronger grip and arm to grab another brother and sister up. How are you going to do that and you wallowing in misery, wallowing in self-pity? Please. So I'm going to keep mentioning pain. Why not put the emphasis on the aim of God rather than on your pain? Plus, we're being born anew. We're being born brand new. That's why we all hollered when we came here, right? Huh? And remember, you said, well, I didn't. You don't know nothing about that. But right now, as we are being born anew, and that's what's happening, we are being born again. And there's somebody giving birth to us. He's in Chicago. No, he's in Phoenix right now on his way to Chicago. Paul said, I don't remember the exact place, but it's in your book. I'll have it in the next article. Oh, I got it here with me right now somewhere. But that's a fact. I'm just touching that. I want you to chew that up. You some heavyweights in here. You got powerful brain. You take it and you chew that up. You chew that up. Now look. What plan? The plan here is the plan contained in the Bible and Quran that is being understood now. That plan or way is fulfilled in the wisdom of Almighty God, which Jesus said would be revealed to those at the end of the world. Jesus said that. Didn't he praise God for hiding his wisdom from the so-called wise and prudent and revealing it to babies? Those babies is us. We are the babies of God, the children of the Most High God. Again, to paraphrase Isaiah's words of God, he said that as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are his thoughts and ways higher than the wicked and the ignorant. If we stand still and look straight up in the heavens, on the physical side, how high up would that be? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I asked him one day, was the sun in the center of the universe? He said, no, near the center. We are sitting on a ball rotating around the sun. And this orbit, somewhere in the orbit, is the center. I don't know precisely where because I wasn't here. That was too long ago. And you get back into the 80-some-odd trillion years ago, I don't know nothing about when that was. But life started somewhere on this orbit that we're on right now. Okay? You following me?
Yes, sir.
He said that the universe diameter is 76 trillion miles. 76 quintillion miles. 76 what? Quintillion. It's a big distance. Just imagine a basketball. Now imagine it as glass. Now imagine it filled with little stars. And right in the middle is the solar system. Okay? Outside of that is nothing. Inside of that is where activity called universe. And it's roughly round. Way in the middle of that is the solar system. And that's where we are. And the power of the whole thing is right on this globe that we're on right now. Aren't white folks saying the last frontier is the mind? Isn't that what they say? Why? The last frontier is the mind. Why? Why? What is he saying? He's indirectly saying that he knows that the power of creation is in the human mind. Just to touch it. What I just said, can't you see the picture? You saw it instantaneously. You can conceive of the universe in your head. Why? How come? What else do you know of that can conceive of it? You did that in a split second, didn't you? How come you able to do that? What does that tell you about yourself?
Come on.
Huh? All praise is due to Allah. It tells you who God is.
That's right.
If we could see straight out from the edge of the universe, where light ends, we would be seeing about 38 quintillion miles. Now, the point is that we are not as smart as the Supreme Being, are we? Some of us act like we, and talk like our ignorance is supreme knowledge. Some of us, when somebody trying to advise us on something, we will talk as if our limited, narrow information and point of view is it.
Right.
And if somebody asks you to back up what you're talking about, you can't.
That's right.
Or you may just say, well, I just believe.
Right.
Please. In Isaiah, God then goes on to give a powerful illustration of his supremacy. Again, we're still in Isaiah 55. He points to the rain that comes down from above and the snow, water that nourishes the earth and brings forth vegetation, grain, and the like. He states forcibly that his word is like that. He does not speak and his words come back to him empty, void, useless, or without producing the effect he intended. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said on the other side of Calvary that the Nation of Islam would fall and rise never to fall again. You are and I are participating, along with our illustrious minister, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, in the fact that this will, notice the words, never fall again. What? Never. Your Bible tells you that God is going to get rid of all the nations. Does he not say that? The Holy Quran and Bible says God's going to get rid of all the nations of the earth. Here we are, so-called little ragtag black folk, following a leader who says, no, what is being built on the back of this brother will never fall again. Never fall again? I mean, what's the basis of a statement like that? He's either right or he's wrong. If this is right, do you know what that's saying? It means that you and I are participating in the building of the kingdom of God. Or the kingdom of what? Heaven on earth. Now that's serious. Now that's something to think about. This ain't no cult. No, this is a nation. But what kind of nation? It's that nation that will fill up the planet. The birds of others will have a place on the branches, but eventually there won't be nothing but this. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad was asked once by Life magazine in 1962, what is your aim? He said, to rule the world. Serious, isn't it? Interesting statement, isn't it? Black man out of Georgia with a 4th grade education talking stuff like that? Where do you get such moxie from? To conclude this section, he said his words always accomplishes that which pleases him, and that which he proposes, his words always succeeds in the matters for which he sent them. His words always prosper and achieves the purpose for which he spoke what he spoke. We black people have fulfilled 400 some odd years of slavery. I want to make a comment about that. I don't want to hold you too long, so I'm going to put this watch where I can see it. You heard of Abraham? Yes, sir. Righteous black man. That's right. Lived around 5,000 years ago. Everybody seemingly on the earth respects him. Pretty interesting, huh? A man is known and respected 5,000 years after he lived? What's that about? In the 15th chapter of Genesis, we are told that God repeated to Abraham why he directed him to leave his country, kindred, and his father's house in chapter 12. His purpose was to give to Abraham and his family land. He did choose them for his aims and purposes, but his aims and purposes with that man and his family did not stop 5,000 years ago. Please listen to this very carefully. In that which he ordered Abraham to do, he was adding to that which he had already set in motion, to serve as types, prophetic persons and events, pointing to persons and events alive right now or who have recently died. It is in the 15th chapter of Genesis that Abraham respectfully asked a very interesting question of God. Abraham sought from God a better understanding of what God had assured him about his promises concerning this future land that his descendants would inherit. He wanted a better mental grip on the means by which God's words or plans would come to pass. He wanted God to show him how his descendants would inherit what God was giving him. Almighty God loved this man and granted him his request. Now look at how God did it. He put Abraham into a deep sleep. And then in Abraham's deep sleep transported him in his spirit to our time. Various translators put his experience in these words: a horror of great darkness fell upon him. A thick and dreadful darkness came over him. A vision of terrible foreboding, darkness and horror came over him. A horror, a shuddering fear of great darkness assailed and oppressed him. That's what you can find in various Bibles. In that state, God told him. Now, he's in that condition. God said to him that we would be brought into the most horrible experience any human beings ever experienced since human beings began. We'd be strangers in a strange land. We'd be treated in the worst way by people strange to us. We would serve them 400 years. After an extension of time, from the mercy of God for both people, they, meaning we, would be delivered from our oppressors. That deliverance is in process right now. By the help of Allah, you will witness a major aspect of this deliverance on the 3rd of next month. 2 Mondays from now, right here in this city, when the Honorable Louis Farrakhan opens his mouth and speaks to the modern Pharaoh and the what? World. Not just America, but the world. C-SPAN, is that right? C-SPAN live. And it's going to be repeated. That's what they usually do on C-SPAN. They repeat it. They repeat it. And they repeat it. It's going to be heavy. You know, Muslims, I guess, use the word heavy and deep more than any other people on the planet. but we're trying to say something that's heavy and deep. Abraham was made to experience in a profound way in his spirit that which we were going to experience in reality, in full reality, not just in the spirit, but on our backsides, and we have. We have come through something so hard, so rough, that it's hard for you and I, living in 1993, to really capture what we were going through 100, 200, 300 years ago in this country, except through careful reading and just discussing it. It's hard to believe we came through this, the more you know about it. Several years later, after the birth of his firstborn Abraham, and Ishmael said a prayer for us, that Allah would make of us a nation submissive to him. In the 29th verse of Surah 2 in the Holy Quran, you can find their prayer is not only for us as a people, but also for an individual from among us to be raised by Almighty God, Allah, who would teach us God's messages, teach us the understanding of the Bible and the Holy Quran, but the Bible that we have read without understanding, and his wisdom, and that the effect of this wisdom would purify us. And purification necessarily involves a change. Right? And the change is not easy, but it's a birth process. Be honest, when you first heard the word righteousness, I don't mean when you heard it in the church, but when you heard it in the mosque, how did you feel in the heart? It frightens us. We have been made so wrong by white folks that the idea of doing good is alien, strange, foreign. I ain't interested. Isn't that the truth? We have been made alien to self. And if you break down the word righteous, it means basically doing what is right in accordance with wisdom. Righteous, it's not a strange, it's not a foreign thing. Huh? And so we come to the mosque and we hear the brother run it down, and we read the paper, we hear Minister Farrakhan speak, and our conception is that everybody else in the room is just like that word. Not realizing that we're struggling too. Right. We're coming out of the same hell. We may be about 3 or 4 steps ahead of you. Huh? We're not holier than you. You understand what I'm saying? So a brother or sister makes a misstep, and you say, that message ain't nowhere. No, that's a jive excuse to run away from the struggle. All praise is due to Allah. Using somebody else as a scapegoat. Jews claim they are the ones who underwent the prophesied 400 years of slavery. Isn't that what they say? An examination of this claim takes one who is unaware into unexpected waters, into the reality of just why truth, especially under certain circumstances, is indeed stranger than fiction. until this reality fully dawns on the mind and heart. Remember what I said earlier, that mainly Jewish, in terms of my limited reading now, mainly Jewish writers have led the Caucasian world in presenting Jesus in more of his humanity, which includes the fact that he was related to women. You know what I mean? He wasn't walking around in a glass tube, goody-goody two-shoes, yet he was a righteous man, extraordinarily righteous man. But he interacted with females, and in Christian theology, only men interact with God, with women, pardon me, not God. If Jesus was God, did he find women beautiful? How do you think about that, sisters? I'm come to it in a second. I just want you to think on it. So the Jews are helpful, very helpful. At some point, our brothers are going to tell you about it. Very interesting. I can't wait to hear the tape. Conversation they had with about 20 or 25 Jewish learned people in this city. I know you'll come out for that. There's something going on with Jews and black folks in America. Look on page 79. I forget if it's How to Eat, Live, Part 1 or 2. I forget which one it is. But on page 79, there's writings there by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. In effect says the Jews overseas, they can hang it up. They done overstep the limits. But the Jews in America, they may work out some, intelligent relationship with black folks. So now here God uses one man, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, to bring about this change as they locked back in 83 and 84. And they don't bend brothers' arms. We see their arms bending more and more and more and more. It's almost, I'm not saying this in a pejorative way, not putting Jews down, but he told the truth on them, and they told lies on him, and their lies are evaporating now. Isn't that something?
Yes, sir.
I mean, isn't that an indication that there is more power in the land on the side of black folks than what white folks possess? Didn't this government participate in the fall of the Nation of Islam? And yet it's back and growing fat. I don't mean in the nasty sense. I'm going to qualify that right quick. I mean healthy, large. Fat has a good connotation, then it has a lot of bad connotation. Don't get upset. When did the Jews begin their 400 years, which they claim they suffered during slavery? And they claim that their enslavement was fulfilled in the time of the Exodus. Did it begin during Abraham's time, or did it begin after the time of Joseph and in the book of Exodus? When did this 400 years really begin? Let us pause just for a moment to really look at this question. It has to do with the secrets of the Bible. It has to do with the secrets of God. It has to do with the secrets of the devil. It has to do with that aspect of God's truth revealed in the last days that makes us free. It has to do with the fall of America. And it even bears on the roots of the fall of the nation in 1975 and its rise in 1977 and the fact that it will never fall again. Look at the number of years from Abraham. Now, I'm asking you to do this. Just do this. Look at the number of years from Abraham's time through his sons and other descendants such as Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, and others. Their histories fill out the book of Genesis. Does part of the 400 plus years run in part through their times? Do their times cover the 400 years? Because Exodus opens up with the time of the end, doesn't it? Of that 400 years, seemingly. If so, again, when did it start? If this 400 plus year time of slavery began or begins with their enslavement, who of them was enslaved? Abraham was a prophet of God. Prophets, men are not made by God into prophets and then they go into slavery. Once God brings them out of slavery, they're out of slavery forever. The only one we find in that book of Genesis that was a slave was Joseph. And that was only for about roughly 30 years, or not even that, about maybe something like 12 years, 18 years, I'm not sure how many years, but not for a long time. He wasn't a slave until his brothers sold him into slavery. And then he came out of slavery, didn't he? And he came out with big juice, didn't he? In fact, he came out with such big juice when Pharaoh learned about Joseph's wisdom, and he could see, or he felt, that this wisdom would solve his problems. He told the people, get him out of there. And Joseph said, no, I'm coming out on these conditions that I dictate. And Joseph dictated the terms of his own release. That don't sound too much like a slave anymore, huh?
No, sir.
Came out, gave the king good advice, Pharaoh good advice. Pharaoh accepted it. We don't read where he argued at all. Like Ahab didn't argue with Elijah. And the king was so impressed, he gave Joseph his ring. He gave Joseph everything except his seat of authority.
Come on.
Joseph became, from that point of view, the second most powerful person in the country, huh? But then you got the story of Moses and Aaron. And Moses was put over everybody in the country, including Pharaoh. And Aaron was made his voice. That's a hint, a big hint. Big hint. More than a hint.
Right.
In John chapter 8, the Jews and Jesus were in a very significant argument. Bottom line of it is, Jesus laid heavy stuff on the Jews. You are of a different father than the father I'm from. The Jews argued back, and then he took their own words to convince them or convict them of the fact that they were not even of Abraham. If you believe Jesus' words according to the 8th chapter of John, then you've got to believe that they are putting forth a big fraud when they said they served 400 years according to the idea given in the Old Testament. What does that really get us to? We haven't got time to thoroughly explain it, but it's a picture. What you have there is a picture. There was a man named Moses, all right, but he went from Egypt into Europe. And when he got there, he found white folks who were in bad shape. Now, there were some other white folks elsewhere, but we're talking about those specific white folks which were in the majority. As far as Caucasians on the planet, the bulk of them were in Europe, on their all fours, swinging around on trees, in their caves, along with their dead. Didn't know how to bury their own dead. Fighting with animals. And with their best friend not being God but a dog. Not downing white folks. And I don't mean to offend you if you have a white relative. But it is a fact. I'll say it as gently as I know how. It's a fact. They smell like dogs. And that has an origin. We didn't have nothing to do with that. We didn't have nothing to do with that. But it's an indication that there's something about us and them that we need to understand. Brothers or sisters, don't you run up and down the basketball court, for example, and you run up and down the basketball court a couple hours, you smell what we call funky. Right? But soap and water removes it, and you smell good again, right? They run up and down that court, and you have funk, but you have something else. And it reminds you of Cocker Spaniels and German Shepherds and whatnot, doesn't it? No, this is not knocking white folks, but it's something it's a matter of historical fact that we're not bringing up because it's irrelevant, it's relevant. And we should deal with all relevant facts. Just put them in perspective. We're not down in white folks because of that part of their history. God sent them someone to get them up out of that condition. But what you have in your Bible is a picture of us. And we're in a cave-like condition, mentally and spiritually on our all fours. Eating every and anything. Brothers took me out to a restaurant last night, and I ain't never seen that many snails and lobsters in my life. And big lobsters, and I forget all the names of it, scallops and shrimp, gobs of garbage. I saw one very beautiful black woman, a beautiful sister, with a plate full of them long legs. I said, look at my sister, God. I said, I looked at her. I said, she gonna eat that stuff. She was putting that stuff on her. She had a big platter. Boom. Boom. I said, oh my God, sister. I couldn't say nothing to her. She would have hit me in my mouth. But I'm just saying that it's terrible with the way we've been taught to eat. You don't want to eat no clam. That stuff is pure garbage. Why eat that which God has made to take care of garbage? Okay, I will. Why eat that which God put here to eat up and remove garbage? Then we're going to eat that which eats garbage. Please. Lord have mercy. And pig is bad for you. The doctors here can run it down, this bad fella. You say, well, I like bacon. It smells good. Stay away from bacon 30 days and you won't be able to stand the stench. It stinks. No praise is due to Allah. You know, when you and I used to smoke, when you smoke, at first you cough. It burns your mouth. Nothing about it is good. But you force yourself to smoke. After a while, the body is forced to submit. You forced it by your will to submit to your madness. Right? Then if you stop smoking for a month, what happens if you go back? You go back through the same thing. That tells us that we had to force a biochemical change in our mouth, tongue, and whatever to be able to smoke. Because if you coughed and hacked every single day, you just wouldn't do it. But you force a change in yourself to accept that madness. Right? Yes, but if you put it down and go back, and you repeat that thing, and every time you put it down and go back, you repeat it. Shouldn't that tell us something about the way we're constructed? We were not made to smoke or created to smoke. Same thing with whiskey. You cannot say whiskey tastes good. You're a liar. No, you told a lie. Pardon me. Whiskey does not taste good at all. Beer does not taste good. Not at all. You say, I like it. You don't like it. Your body is against it. But there's a foolish part in the brain. A real dumb, ignorant part that you could oversimplify and say the nigger in her. That part says, take it anyhow, because subconsciously I got to be like white folks. I see them doing it, I'm going to do it too. Because the white man is my God. Smoking and drinking, you're saying white folks is God. I'm sorry. That's where we got it from. You say, but didn't the Indians used to smoke 16,000 years ago? Remember, you didn't know nothing about no Indians smoking 16,000 years ago until the Elijah Muhammad said it. So you can't use that. We do what we do in this country because white folks taught us to do it. And now we got two divine men pulling us on one side and white folks pulling on the other. And some of us jump on the side of white folks and pull. Huh? Come on now, please. Let's look at it like it is. I'm going to hurry through this as fast as I can, but I just want to touch that. That's a fact. There's a nicer way to put it, but I'm going to repeat it. When we do consistent wrong, we call them bad habits or addiction. Addiction is nothing but a repeated evil. Doom, 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 doom. You keep on repeating it again and again and again. That's all it is. Break it. We got to break it. This wisdom will break it up. And the more we learn about ourselves, and the more we learn about one another, we find out from this wisdom we all got the same nature. We all share the nature of the Supreme Being. This brother and I, we don't know each other, we haven't talked to each other, but this brother got the exact same nature I got. the exact same nature. His talents are different than mine, here and there, but we got the same nature, because he's from the same source I'm from. If we could go back far enough, we'd run right into the supreme being.
Right.
Luke says, and so-and-so begot so-and-so, and so-and-so begot so-and-so, and so-and-so begot so-and-so, and then it says Adam was from God. Now, we're not going to get into that, but my point is, that's where we're from. So that's what makes us brother. That's what makes this sister my sister. We are brothers and sisters by reason of our birth.
That's right. Feel nice, bro.
You can't change that.
Come on.
You can't change it. You can't prove otherwise. Now, you can cloud it up by telling a lie. But the truth is we are from the same source, the same parentage. Now, are we friends of one another? That's another thing. If we're truly brothers and sisters, then we are friends of one another. But in this stage of our development, we say of one another, he is a brother and a friend. We're all brothers and sisters by reason of birth, but we become the friends by practice. And we got to struggle in that, right? Some of us, talking about Muslims now, some of us in our prayer, oh Allah, bless Muhammad, and bless some of the followers of Muhammad. You don't say it like that, but that's what you mean in practice. I'm saying like it is. Don't bless that nigga. Just bless the ones I like. And oh Allah, make some of the followers successful. Don't make them all successful, because I'm envious of some or jealous of the other. Huh? And I don't want to see, Allah, that brother or sister make it. I want you to short stop then in life. Some of us think like that, way down in our nigga. The quickest way I can say it. And that nigga is something that we want to bury. Kill that thing. We have a brother named Brother Anthony in one city. He used to tickle me the way he said it. He said, Islam will help us choke the nigga in ourselves. A Muslim is one who is a friend of God and his brothers and sisters. How do you get to be a friend of God? Obey him. The relationship is master-servant. Do this. Yes, sir. That's it. We can't tell him anything. We can't guide him anywhere. We can't surprise him. The only relationship that can exist is that of a master, a benevolent master, who is intently concerned about our welfare and well-being, who never has a bad motive with respect to us. Some of us think God got bad motives. He blessed her and not me. I don't like him. Way down in us, I don't like God too much, because, in fact, that's why I ain't coming to the mosque no more, because, hey, that's a scapegoat. You're going to use God now as a scapegoat. Some of us do that. We don't want to come to the study sessions. I don't need that. Yet, in the study session, God may put in the heart or mind of a brother or sister who don't know the personal problem you're dealing with or wrestling with. Put it in their head to tell you, and they don't even know nothing about what you're dealing with, exactly what you need to know. No, I ain't going to take it unless the minister tells me. Silly. Maybe he can't get to your city. Maybe you can't reach Minister Sean. What you going to do? I'll stay home and wallow in my misery till somebody important comes to me. That's silly. You're going to sit a long time, or you may never be able to come out your house. Allah, he blesses us in the way that's best. Sometimes he'll bless you through a brother or a sister that you didn't think nothing of. Right. Not only to tell you what you need to hear, but that you then get a newfound respect for them. Wow, I didn't know she knew that or he knew that. And then some of us don't even want to tell the brother or sister that we admire them. We wait till you in the ground. Then we cry over you, which is jive. Huh? You're crying for yourself because you didn't take the opportunity to show good to one another. That's one of the values of knowing when you're dead, you're through. That makes life very important. I don't be concentrating on the day I'm going to be in the box or whatever. I don't want to think about that. I'm going to think about life. die if I must, but live while I can. And do all the good we can by one another. A Muslim loves God and he has a friendly relationship with God. A Muslim is ever growing in his or her relationship with God. A Muslim following the Honorable Louis Farrakhan picks up the study guide that talks about one's intimate relationship with God. I mean, just think, I don't know about y'all, but I know when I get on the plane, I pray.
That's right. Yes,
I don't trust that white man up there. I don't. And if you ever hear, and I hope this don't happen, but if you ever hear that Jabril was on the plane and it went down, then I have to say that Allah wanted somebody in there to go down. And he used me as a sacrifice. But other than that, I be praying. I pray for a safe takeoff. Then I pray for for smooth flight through your skies. I bear witness to whose skies it is. And then I ask for an uneventful flight.
That's right.
I do every time. Then I ask for a safe landing. And I specify the city I'm leaving from and the city I'm going to. Yes, I do. And I'm going to tell you the truth. Then I do it in the name of your servant, the Christ, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That's what I do. I noticed the Muslims overseas, a few times I've been over there with the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, the Muslim pilot prays. I think that's out of sight. But the white folks say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. They talk like they got control over this thing. But he's also talking out of his own godhood. He's a god already enough. Haven't you heard both the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and if you didn't hear him, you certainly heard the Honorable Louis Farrakhan state that the white folks, they're proof that God is real. He's a man. They prove it. They don't act, they act like God is somebody they cooperate with. You do your thing, God, I'll do mine. And if God interferes with them, they put him out the way. Praise the Lord, pass the ammunition. And if you say, though, you shouldn't be bombing them people, he said, well, I want to bomb them anyway, I don't like them. But God don't say you shouldn't do that. He'll find some way to tell you in so many words, to hell with God. Look at they are God in their own right. Look at them. Every year they come up with the styles. I saw a white woman in Roanoke, Virginia the other day. I looked at this white woman. There was three of them. It was three white women and a sister. They're all into fashion. And one of them said at one point, how the fashion now is hemlines, any length will do. It's all of them will work. Notice the terminology. All of them work. All of them are fashionable now. You can wear any damn thing is what she was saying. Please.
Go ahead, brother. Bring it in.
Let me use that chair a minute to make a point.
Go ahead.
Have you ever seen a woman on the TV? She got a dress up to here to begin with.
That's right. That's right.
Then she sits down, she does. And when she sits down, it's still a problem. Have you seen that? That's stupid. That is immoral. That's not right. But who puts the woman in the clothing? Men. Who's she ultimately dressing for? Men. She may say, I'm dressing for myself. No, you're not. Who made the clothes? Men. So way down in your subconscious, I don't care how modern or up-to-date you are, you're dressing for some man somewhere. You say, well, I ain't got one. Well, you're dressing for one to come. Our poor sisters dressing like clowns. No, that's wrong. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad used to hate that because he loves black women and wants to elevate our sisters, but you can't be elevated, sister, wearing a bikini in the public.
That's right.
Or a string in the public. And a foot and a half of cloth and pay $500. Stupid. Say, well, I'm following the stars. I've been to Hollywood. You walk on the stars. The stars in this world are beneath your feet. The stars of God are above your head. This next statement, my dear brothers and sisters, I can only suggest it. There's no time to go into this. But I'll make the point as simply as I know how, as it's important for us to see the value of these two books. Here's a book we've already had with us called the Bible. We in this book. If you were told that there's a picture of yourself on page 873, aren't you going to go straight to 873? You're not going to take 2 months reading all them pages to get to 873. You're going straight to you to see how they position you. Now, this book is about us. White folks too. Pardon me, white folks too, but this book bears witness to this book. Right. This book straightens out things in this book. This book bears witness to the truth in this book. So if this book is talking about us, then this book is too. And there's no way these books could be talking about the end of the world and not talk about America, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and Louis Farrakhan. There's no way. No way. Now look, this is just a little point on it that helps with the major point I want to get to, then sit down, but also will help you later on if you make the study yourself, and there's ways we can get to this on another occasion. Listen to this. First, let me begin with this point. A small point, but yet a big point. If you look in your Bible and look at the boundaries that God told Abraham that his seed, the land they would inherit, and then you study the history of Jews, all through that, what they say is Jews, all through the New Bible, Old and New Testament. If you study it, you will find they never occupied the so-called promised land in accord with those boundaries. I'm oversimplifying to say it like this. They were told, God told Abraham, you're going to inherit that much, and they've inherited that much. They never lived out their nationhood. Even when, according to their talk, they reached their zenith under Solomon, they never filled out or lived in that whole land. What does that tell us? The type or the sign is never fills up or completes the prophecy. It is that which fulfills the prophecy that meets all the terms of the prophecy. The Jews never lived fully in those boundaries. That tells us something. And what it tells us, if you go back to your very beginning of your Bible, you find this. White scholars admit this. Not only admit it, they teach it. They don't admit it, they teach it. That you got in your first and second chapters of Genesis, 2 accounts of the creation of man. I can't go into that deeply, but go ahead and read it. Go get some of what the scholars have to say. They will prove to you. You got one layer, then you got another layer. So you got some other layers in there. One is about something that by the time we would wake up has happened, and the other is about us and our own time. One has to do with the beginning of the white race. The other has to do with our beginning now. One, if you notice in the book of John, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. That's both talking about way back yonder, but it's also talking about now. Later on in 1 John, he talks about the beginning, but he's talking about we've handled the word of flesh. In one instance, he's talking about the prophecy about a human being, and in the other, he is talking about their beginnings with this human being who was alive. They walked and talked and interacted with him. Okay? It's a lot, but I want you to think over this carefully. You got 2 accounts of the creations of the heavens and the earth, and 2 accounts of the creation of man. You have the first Adam and the second Adam, as you see not only in Genesis, but also in Romans chapter 5, and also in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. The first Adam has reference to the white race. The second Adam is a man and his people. They say Jesus Christ. As I say in the introduction to this book, which I, of course, hope all of you will buy before you leave here today, I make reference to the fact that the way people talk about Jesus Christ, it is as if Christ was his family name. And it's not. It's a title. There was a lot of boys back then named Jesus. There's a lot of boys in Spain and in Mexico called Jesus. There's some boxers called Jesus. Jesus, John, Peter. It's a common name. Some of the older versions of the Bible says Jesus the Christ. Huh? The Christ. Who is the Christ? What do you mean? Jesus the Christ. Jesus the Christ. Jesus the Messiah. How come you don't hear that much? Jesus the Messiah. There's a lot in these words, and I hope that you'll dig into some of this. So you got here two descriptions or accounts or records or explanations how everything had its beginning, and yet Isaiah, Jeremiah, and other prophets talk from the mind of God. They talk about in the future, at the end of the world, you have a new beginning also. And the condition of life at the end of the world is so dark, meaning like this. Let me go back. Peter, I think it's 2 Peter, says that the light of prophecy is like a light shining in a dark place. Now the dark is not referenced, has nothing to do with physical darkness. It has everything to do with spiritual darkness. The word darkness is from a Greek word meaning squalid. Squalid. Absolute filth. Not physical filth, but a physical filth that comes from a mental filth. People who are ignorant, love their ignorance, hate wisdom, and love to do evil. Out of it comes absolute dirt. It's called darkness. Into that situation, the prophet's words pointed. But there's not enough light. The prophet's word is not powerful enough to strike the spiritual retinas of our being, of our eyes, and enable us to see. But the books or the words of prophecy point to now. If we were wise enough, we could have opened up the book and seen what was what. But somebody had to come and put something strong in our brain to enable this eye then to see. The capacity for sight was there. Somebody had to open up our eyes. That's been done. It's being done. Has been done and is being done. Then the light of prophecy hooks up or bears witness to the direct light of God's word. Then we're able to see. This teaching is so powerful that even, in years going by, we don't harp on the white man being the devil. That's an established fact. They know it. We know it. Everybody knows it. It's as American as apple pie. Sure it is. It is. Nobody argues that. Who argues that anymore? But when we used to hear years ago the white man's the devil, if you didn't hear no more than that from a brother staggering down the street, that's so powerful that all of a sudden we see things different. This teaching is of such nature that when you hear it one time, you are never the same again. Even if you fight it, you are never the same. One dose from a brother or a sister that partly understands it, and all of us partly understand it, but one who partly understands it, is of such power on the mind, in our souls, that we are never the same again. You read in your Bible that Jesus took some spittle, mixed it with dirt, and put it on the man's eye. Don't think, you know he didn't actually pick up some dirt and lay it on the man's eye. It didn't happen like that. You know it didn't happen. It means what came out of his mouth. Water is compared to truth. Mixed with that from which we come, our nature. Taking the truth and laying it on our minds right in the core of our nature, and we come to life. That's why we'll be given the knowledge of self. The knowledge of self. Self equals nature. Nature equals self. Our real self is we're being told who we are. And we're gradually learning how to be ourselves. A Muslim is one he made peace with God. She's made peace with God. How do you make peace with God? You get to be friendly with God. How do you get to be friendly with God? You learn about him. You find out what he wants. You do it. Well, how do we become peaceful Muslims by one another? What you love for your brother and sister, that's what you love for yourself. But we got to be told what's good for self, not the reefer or the cocaine. Huh? What's good for me is good for you in terms of our nature. What's good for my nature is good for your nature because it's the same nature. Make sense? That's a Muslim. That's all a Muslim is about. Bottom line. Not hard to understand. Now look. The Bible is written from cover to cover in layers. More than one reality is placed under the same name. The Bible speaks to its reader about persons, events, things, even institutions and ceremonies. It's also speaking about other persons, things, and other institutions and ceremonies under the top of what it's talking about over here. You follow me now? It's talking about A, B, C, D. But under that is another A, B, C, D. This is the broad view. If we get up close, we'll find that these layers are not so hard to understand as we think. Such words as complicated and difficult and convoluted, involved, puzzling, intricate, hard to understand, unclear, mystery, confused, entangled, strange, and enigmatic have been... I just want to touch something, if I may. Just consider this, just for a second. Just going to touch it with a rapid flyby, okay? It's not an accident that this planet, Pluto or Platoon, is 4,600 billion miles away from the sun. Not an accident. It's not an accident that 4,600 years into the devil being on the planet, Muhammad came with the Holy Quran. Not an accident, Malachi chapter 4, verses 5 and especially 6, talking about the coming of Elijah. That's only a hint. These two books are scientifically put together. I mean, there's so much in this, it's not even funny. God's put these books together. The point I want to drive or lay on your mind, if I may for a moment, is that we all got our experts. We're not born knowing anything. We grow up and we take certain persons as our experts. Sometimes it's a book, the author of whom we don't even know. But this book says. So we've grown up now and we reach our adulthood. But every one of us in this room relies on somebody other than ourselves for certainty about what's going on around us and in us, right? I got to rely on brother. He knows more about the human body than I do. You follow what I'm getting at? All of us got our experts now. So later on you may become an expert in some field. But an expert only with reference to other experts. And a relative expert, not a total expert. Is that correct? Come on now. Now, if somebody can write two books thousands of years ago, then they go ahead and die. And thousands of years later, everything they wrote comes to pass. Are they experts? Can it be proven? It's easy to prove. We ain't got the time because I got a little lug to drop on you in a minute and then duck. But I want to make that point. These books are aimed at now. These books cast light on our situation right now. And everybody who produced these books are dead. Please, I know how to say that. I want you to never forget that. Just go home and turn it over. If the words in these books came through wise men, we say from God, and they describe the totality of the situation we are in, then I repeat, they are experts to the max. And so what we're told by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is he met God. And these books say that one day God's going to come. I might well go into it right now. Look, in several places in both the Bible and Quran, it makes clear that into the land of, I'm just going to summarize this, into a land of darkness, God himself would come and manifest supreme wisdom, the supreme light. That's a fact. It's all through these books. Nobody who knows these books will argue that. This would occur at the end of the time for such darkness to rule God's people and this earth. Darkness is what? It's the state or quality of being dark. is the absence or deficiency of light, the darkness of night. It's the consequence of obscurity, concealment, lack of knowledge, or lack of enlightenment. It is the result of the lack of sight called blindness. However, in the spiritual sense, this word darkness means wickedness or evil. The rulers or forces of darkness who rule in the underworld are those who lead in wickedness. Of course, both the leaders as well as those who follow them have their supreme leader in wickedness, who is the wicked counterpart of the supreme leader in righteousness. Almighty God himself. Is there anybody on earth today who claims to be God's counterpart? Yet it's obvious that he's the leader in wickedness? Or it can be established that he is? Yes, indeed. Where is he? Until God comes, the real or full identity of the wicked and the righteous, who are ruled by the wicked and thus made wicked too, is concealed. The identities of both would be concealed even from themselves until God himself comes. He comes in the night when it's dark while men slept to his own people, who, as it is written, Isaiah 9:2, walked in darkness after the lead of the rulers or forces of the underworld where darkness reigns. This sleeping refers to the lack of sufficient alertness or attentiveness on the part of the wicked to the signs and then the fulfillment of the prophecies in the scriptures by Master Farad Muhammad and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad on their meeting and the immediate years that followed. The wicked had called good evil and evil good, and had put light for darkness and darkness for light so long in their efforts to deceive others until they had deceived themselves, put themselves in darkness. And under those circumstances, Master Farad Muhammad came. The nature or the origin and depth of the darkness into which Master Farad Muhammad came and began his work in the raising of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is of such kind, character, or degree, was so extreme that the wisest of scientists of the past could only compare this time period to that darkness out of which life first came, which was before even the conception of the universe. We're in that dark time now. But it's getting a little light, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Not as dark as it was 60 years ago. And there's no accident that the Honorable Louis Farrakhan is 60 years old this year. No accident. He wasn't born in 1933 for nothing.
Think about it.
I don't like to play with numbers, but when you get up under the truth of this thing, everything is coming out as it was conceived, mathematically. You say, some people say, well, math is cold. Wrong. Math is the base of science. Brothers, think about black women for a minute. If you say they are the creation of God, and they are, and deeper, we all have been taught. I know that few of you in here might not, I don't want to, but let me just say it. The first life in creation was, we were taught, a black man. That can be proven. It was hard. Self-creation was rough. Basically, two things he wanted at a certain point. He wanted comfort, but he also wanted to see another being like himself. Out of that desire, he produced the woman, the first black woman. Now think about the math involved. Come on. You're going to tell me that's not science and art developed to the max?
Come on.
If you say the woman is not beautiful,
Come on.
we do a double take and look at you twice. What's wrong? As one brother said, maybe you belong in that parade that they had today. Not putting down gays. But I'm just touching it. Look at the sunset. Isn't it beautiful? But isn't it based in science? All beauty and art is based in mathematics. Think on it. I can't go too much further into that. We'd be here all day. And I only know a little bit. Even the little bit I know would take us a lot of time. But look at this. Just think about that. Think on how wise that first man was to produce one being who took care of all that business. And I'm just going to say this. I hope I don't say the wrong thing, but I don't expect to see you on at FOI tomorrow night. But brothers, oh Lord, maybe I shouldn't say this. Buy your wife, buy her something. Buy her a gift. Sister, isn't it a fact that you like to have gifts bought for you all the time? Check this out. I'm not going to say it, but it's a fact. Some brothers buy their wife a flower every now and year. You know, whenever you think about it. No, these women need to be bought gifts all the time. You got to buy them something all the time, all the time. They love surprises. Even when they know you're going to buy it, they still want you to do it anyway. One brother told me how he sends his wife, she's off to school studying. I send my wife a card once a week. I said, brother, you better up that to 2 and 3 times a week. and then surprise that up some bit. I mean, isn't that a fact, sister? Hey, this is pointing to something in our nature. You've all got to get this speech the Honorable Louis Farrakhan just made in New Orleans.
Yes, sir.
He got down into the nature of male and female in a beautiful way. He was dealing with 1,500 to 2,000 students. You got to get that videotape. It is magnificent. And then at the end of it, he was asked questions. And the questions he was asking, how he handled them, remind me of the way it is in the New Testament, how Jesus handled questions. He really dealt with it. You got to get that one. And he dealt with the need for us not just to have our own schools, but through grade such and such to grade such and such, they should be, male and female should be separated. He got into that. You need to get a hold of that tape yesterday. Now look, 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 19 through 21. Bears upon the person and work of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, who we say we bear witnesses backed by God and his Christ as he goes about the land raising the dead. Part of this passage compares the word of the prophets to a light shining in a dark place. America is that place. It is true that various persons were blessed to see this or that aspect of this or that of prophecy's fulfillment. A few in part, fewer in full, before and immediately after 1930. For instance, the first president of the organization which later came to be known as the Jehovah's Witnesses accurately predicted 40 years in advance a great event that did occur in 1914. He put his findings in at least one book, that is, this war that he said would come would mark the end of this world, the time of the reign, end of the time of the reign of the forces of darkness. Again, he said it would occur in 1914, and it did. He stated his findings were based 100% on the Bible. His name was Charles Taze Russell. Here's a white man who predicted that this war would occur 40 years before it did. He put it in a book based on the Bible. That indicates something of the practicality of this book and the Holy Quran. It is no accident that the name Jehovah's Witnesses was given to that group in 1931, the same year that the group's second president, Judge Rutherford, met Master Farad Muhammad. Of course, it was in that same year that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad met him too. This indicates that there were persons astute enough to grasp something or even quite a bit of the true significance and momentous nature of these times. Mr. Russell and Mr. Rutherford were both Caucasians. A few years later, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad met some Jews right here in Washington, D.C., Jewish persons, and they had a conversation. They recognized him while he was on the run. Hadn't developed a big, large following yet. They recognized him by reason of what's in their scriptures, or in the scriptures. Think on that. He told me one day, he said, brother, he said, it's written of me in Holy Quran, they recognize me as they recognize one of their sons. Again, this touches up the practicality of these books. This is the same subject matter now that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us, and he said this publicly, and he wrote it publicly, that there are people in this government, to which some of our tax dollars go, who are paid to study the problem of prophecy. Right. No wise person dismisses these books. So if you say, well, I don't understand them too well, hey, change your attitude. That's all. Change, and all of it, you can read. Go get you a living Bible. Get one of these translations in common regular English. And don't get hung up on the long names. And just read it and see these people. And pretty soon you're going to be seeing yourself. It's like looking in a mirror. The Bible and the Holy Quran both state, not in these words, but it states this is fact, that the scriptures tell us that white people, generally speaking, are able to recognize the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Louis Farrakhan for who they really are, even before the majority of us. The children of this world in their generation are wiser than the children of the light. All of this is stated here to say that a great many people, white and black, over the last 60-odd years, who have come to know quite a bit about the reality of the truth of the many written statements, communications, or declarations in the scriptures, were set forth facts, evidence, and other particulars so clear, so detailed, and so accurate that there can be no sane denial that we're living right in the time the Bible and Quran thoroughly describe as the end of the world and the setting up of God's eternal kingdom. One of the most prominent figures or persons described in the scriptures is the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. His birth, character, commission, work, and success, even his prominence, is given in several different accounts throughout the scripture. I'm just saying this to you straight up. You should study this. This is a fact. Your brother is written up from one end of that book to the other. This man's, the way he's put together, the way he speaks, his ability to handle these problems he deals with on a daily basis, with the spirit, day in and day out, lifting everybody else's spirit, tells us a remarkable black man has been produced by God. He didn't produce himself. Right. So is his place in relation to God Almighty, his Christ, and others. His person and work is written of or represented, portrayed, narrated, marked out in vivid detail in some instances, or hinted at in other instances, in such a way and to such a degree that any examination of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan in the light of the scriptures should convince any fair-minded person, or I should say in the light of the testimony or the findings, if you will, and writings of experts, the experts who produce these books, that any fair-minded person can be convinced that he is just exactly whom the Honorable Elijah Muhammad came to recognize our brother to be. My dear brothers and sisters, would you please consider this? The prophets didn't see but 144,000 of us with a predisposition to accept this truth. The rest of us would say later, we ain't coming with that. If there's, let's say, 40 million of us in this country, I don't know what the figure is. You subtract 144,000 from that figure. Can you imagine all these black folks dying? I'm saying to you, and we need to correct our own writing. There are brothers and sisters, I guess in some cases for money or to look big, who are putting out writings, but they're incorrect. Even in our own message to the black man, we're going to correct it. Right. There's a mistake. Right. So somebody put there on page 297, we shouldn't change the words. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad wrote an article in 1964 when Malcolm was throwing garbage at him. This angered God.